friends, welcome to our Mixed Media Moods hosted by myself, DeeDee Catron, and Jen Ingle. This is our current mood board of the month, brought to you by Jen. So stinking cool. I'm going to work on a star, that's what I titled my piece, for this project, and you can see here, this is what it looks like, and then upcoming are a few detailed shots. I want to take a couple minutes here at the beginning of the video and say we have some amazing talent joining us this month. We have Rika, Heather, Karen, and Yasmin, who are all from Artists Live, which is a really great group who gives live demonstrations of mixed media tutorials. So there will be some more information around. Be sure to check that out, and welcome. I am starting here with a 6x12 board, and I did one of these last month for our mixed media moods, but this time I wanted to go from a vertical standpoint to a horizontal. So I trimmed down some paper here. This piece of paper is from one of my lines with 7 Dot Studio, one of the newest ones, called Cotton Candy Dreams, and it's very cool and has a lot of grays and then some kind of like corally colors and some turquoise stuff happening. So you'll see a couple times when I flip that paper over, that's what's happening on the back. As of now though, I'm just trimming it down to make sure that it will fit that board perfectly. And it did end up being a little short on one side, so no problem. If I just trim it down, then it will have a ledge all the way around of pretty equal spacing, and I'm good to go. So before, I've kind of worked on 2 types of projects. I've either done a paper-based project or something else, whether it's wood or canvas or something like that. But I design all these pretty papers, and I don't get to use them as often as I like. Or I just don't end up using them as often as I'd like. It's not that I don't get to, I just don't make it a point. So I wanted to today. I am now going to cover this board in gesso. I had kind of intended to leave it as a wood, but it's not the most glorious colored wood, and I didn't want to worry about staining it. Plus, I knew I was going to be working on top of it with some really bright colors. I wanted to pull some of those beautiful tones from the mood board. I think I don't necessarily do that often enough, or maybe as often as I should. So in the end, I just decided, all things aside, I would cover this board in gesso. And then I got out some golden heavy gel medium and a spatula type little tool. It's by Princeton and they call it a mini blade. And all of the links that I can get for you will be at the bottom in the descriptions box or on the blog, on my blog. So if you need to know details, please check those out there. I'm using the spatula tool now. It's really great. It has this super flat edge and there's silicone based, so I can use it to make a really nice flat even surface of gel medium, and then I can just set my spatula to the side and let it dry, and because it's silicone based, the gel medium will just peel right off. So once I have that layer of gel medium nice and flat, I want it to have a tiny bit of thickness so that it will hold the paper down. Like a fluid matte medium would not be thick enough. I really wanted some stability to this. So I put the paper down on top of that flat area of gel medium and I burnished it with my hands. And then periodically over the next 5 hours, I would come and brayer it out and make sure it's nice and flat. After everything was completely dry, I came back in with 2 layers of clear gesso. And by 2 layers, that means I put 1 complete layer on and I let it dry. And then I put a second layer on and let that dry. And so what I've kind of done now is create this little envelope of medium, acrylic mediums around the paper. And I can see the beautiful paper and I'll get to build on top of it, but it's not going to soak up any of the other things that I put on it, which is good because when paper soaks up mediums, then they tend to turn dark and muddy and it gets kind of like a weird bubbly effect, and I wanted to avoid that, so that's how I did it. Layer of gel medium, paper, gesso, gesso. Now I have out an Umwell Studio stencil, and I am using my favorite modeling paste / molding paste, same thing, 2 different names. This is by Dick Blick. And one, it's super affordable, which is great because we all know that sometimes our favorite supplies can run a bit pricey. So it's super affordable, and then it also has this really cool kind of plaster effect once it's dried, where some of the other mediums get really plastic-y and hard. This one keeps kind of like a cool, like smooth, chalky finish, which I really like. And if you watched my second rendition of Our Mixed Media Moods from January, which was a little mini series, I have kind of been crushing over this charcoal powder, and I totally picked it up from Jean Oliver. I've taken a couple of her classes recently, and I am dying over powder charcoal. I am going back and forth now between the powder charcoal and clear gesso and some water. So what happens is it gets this kind of watercolory ink spilled effect that I love, and by using the clear gesso I'm also making it permanent. Then I have out some brushos, and these brushos are beautiful. They've been around for a long time, and I just around Christmas time got a set of brushos from my beautiful friend Krista from London, and I am using two brushos, the turquoise and the ultramarine blue, and they have them in a couple different sets, so if you're on the lookout, let me know. I'll see what I can help you out with, but I will link the set that I have at the bottom. And so I just poked a hole in the top of my brushos, and when I had wet medium down, I just sprinkled it on, and it came out in this really cool powdery effect. And as soon as it touches the wet medium, then those powders, the pigment that's in them expands and it activates, and it turns into these really, really gorgeous colors. And I'm really loving how all three are playing together. The really rich darkness from the charcoal, the turquoise that's in there, and then that super deep ultramarine blue. And I'm just going back and forth now, heating some areas, picking up some of the areas where it's pooling too much, heating some more areas. And look at that on the right side there. Isn't that kind of cool, that purpley color that started to show through from that ultramarine? Just lovely. Really, really lovely. And I love pigment in all the ways. I love markers and powders and paints and inks, and I love it all. Charcoal. I have some colored charcoal I should show you. Yeah, it's really, really cool stuff. So anyways, that's what I'm doing now. Back and forth, back and forth. Now everything is completely dry, and I am coming back in now, and I'm highlighting that chevron texture that I got using the molding paste and the stencil. I really love chevrons. Anybody that knows me can tell you I'm kind of a fiend for anything with a chevron on it. And that goes from, I have a pair of earrings that are chevrons, I wear clothes that are chevrons, I have chevron bags and a chevron blanket and maybe some pillowcases and maybe a rug. And maybe I should stop before you think I'm absolutely crazy. So anyways, I love this chevron, and it had kind of disappeared in the back a little bit. So by using a heavy gesso in my fingers, I can sort of dry brush on top and bring that chevron back out. And by dry brush, I mean the layer of paint that's on my fingers is super thin. You can see me going back to my under paper and kind of scraping the paint away from my finger and then going to the chevron, because it keeps the paint layer nice and thin on my finger, and then I'm not glopping it on. It's just picking up that super raised texture there. Now, just to double check that everything underneath is going to be nice and secure, I used a workable fixative, and that will seal everything that's underneath it. But because it's a workable fixative, I can keep working on top of it, and all the layers underneath are now permanent. I have a little bit of water here that had some charcoal mixed in it, and then I mixed in some of my fine liner mixture, which is full of 50% airbrush medium and 50% fluid acrylic. And I'm kind of just playing around a little here and adding back in some really stark black spots. I love black and I love white. I love black and white chevrons. And so I really want to bring back some heavy darkness. Not a lot, but in these like nice little areas it adds some cool texture. And I do implement my heat gun a lot. I do take a long time on some of these projects. You know, they are mixed media and they take time to dry and things like that. But but sometimes I can use a heat medium, goodness, I can use a heat gun to speed along the process. So I try not to keep the heat gun on camera too long, and I apologize if that gets a little boring. But I just want to make sure that all my layers are dry before I move on to the next thing. I don't want to wipe up something like you actually kind of just saw and then have to do it again. All right, so here in the cup, I had some clear gesso and I had a little bit of water. So I was kind of checking out that right-hand side where it was very ultramarine bluish, and I felt like it was a little too ultramarine blue for the mood board that we have. I wanted it to kind of be a little more dull or a little more bright, but not kind of like in the middle with that medium tone. I wanted some more variation. So then I got back out that turquoise brush and I kind of played around with it a little bit. First I added some paint down, and then I tried to carve it away, but the paint was too watery. So then I kind of spread it around a little bit and then dabbed it up and then dried it. A bit of a process, but it did the trick, so no problem. Okay, now there is a lot of experimenting on this project, and I have really been loving that about our mixed media moods, and I really hope that you're loving that as well. I do have a lot of stuff to talk through because I am kind of playing around a bit. But I hope that you're learning something, because I've been learning from our mixed media moods. So what I have here on the left-hand side is a huge bundle of sticks that I bought for a class I did previously, a Very Merry Mixed Media workshop, and I'm going to build a star out of them. So I'm pulling that left-handed corner of the mood board into my whole project as sort of the base. So it was a star made out of beechwood. It was super cute, but I live in the desert, so I don't have any beechwood. But I have this huge bundle of sticks left over from one of my last classes around Christmas time. So they do have a little bit of sparkle on them, but once you kind of start playing with them and moving them around a bit, most of the sparkle falls off, which is totally cool with me. And I am bundling them together in the shape of a star. And I'm using a really thick hemp twine that has that really cool gray color from the mood board in it. And I'm just tying all the little edges together and creating a star. Okay, so I bundled up a star, and then it looks like my video skipped ahead just a little bit here. I'm really sorry about that, but I promise you didn't miss much. So what I did was I laid down some masking tape, and then I used a Stabilo mark salt, and I kind of scribbled across the masking tape and then activated it with some water. That's it. You really didn't miss much at all, I promise. And most of the bundling for the star I did was off camera, because it's just laying them out and tying them together like you saw in the first few steps. And I didn't want you to have to sit through that entire process. Now I have a piece of chipboard from OMMM Studio. After I laid that masking tape down, I kind of lost most of those chevrons, which I love, from the background. So I'm going to repeat the sort of kind of feel that I had on them by pulling out this really thick chevron it's a piece of chipboard from OMMM Studio. It comes kind of in a set, and that link will be in the bottom as well if you're interested. And I am covering it in that same modeling paste that I used before. So this is the Dick Blick version, the Blick Artist Materials version. I do think they're trying to sort of rebrand there. And I am using my heat gun to heat this almost dry. So it's more like I am heating it so that the top of it cures, the top of the molding paste, and inside is still gooey. And by doing that, I can now stamp into it with one of my favorite designs for Viva Las Vegas stamps, the number set. And it's kind of like a little background, and I just press it into the molding paste a little bit lightly, but like a little bit firm, so sort of in the middle there. If you push too much, then you might wiggle, and then that wouldn't be good. But try it out and you'll love it. So I did that, and then I let it finish drying all the way. So now it has this texture. It's like embossed. It's so cool. And I'm going back and forth now with some golden high flow acrylics. I have this teal color and this shading gray, and I'm playing with them on this now really cool texturized chevron. And I'm using some water too. So by adding water, it thins the paint out a little bit more and then makes it set into the recesses that are numbers from the number set stamp that we used before. And it does also leave some paint on the surface, and it's just a really cool technique. I love it. I love stamping into modeling paste, one of my favorite things. And I let that dry, and I kind of helped it along with my heat gun, and then I got out the same gesso that I was dry brushing with before. I say dry brushing even though I'm painting with my finger because it's still a very similar effect. And I highlighted that texture some more. So now I have this chevron, and I'm going to cut it in half and set it to either side of the star. And I have this really cool star here. And I'm having a lot of fun with this project. Can you tell? Okay, so then I went and drilled some holes in the wood where the 4 bottom points of the star, so the 2 in the middle and the 2 at the bottom are. And I'm going to use that to secure the star to the wood. That's one of the really great things about working on wood. And I actually made this mistake in a project previously. I didn't think about how I was going to attach things. It became very top heavy, and then I was worried about it. All those fibers that I just put down, they just come from muslin. So I keep a muslin kind of rag, it's really just a scrap of muslin, beside my work desk, and I wipe my paintbrush on it, and I mop up, you know, excess water and things like that with it, and then it gets kind of cool, dyed, and fun colors all over it, and it's really interesting and a great tool to have on hand, both to wipe my paint on and then also to use later in projects. So you can see, so that's where all those fibers came from. Anytime I rip muslin or anything like that, I always just hold on to the fibers, and they go in a little jar, and then I have them whenever I need them. Then you can see I tied my star on through the holes and with some gel medium, and it takes a little bit of work, and I kind of had to finagle it, but it did end up really good in the end. Once everything's dry, it's super secure and totally worth the effort. So I just put my chevrons on, and they are totally on incorrectly. I will fix that later. I notice it later, thank goodness. At least the numbers are going the right way right now, but the chevron, they need to switch sides. And I have these 2 butterfly stamps from Viva Las Vegas Stamps, straight from the mood board. Those beautiful butterflies, the gossamer butterflies, I think, are what are in the mood board. This giant butterfly on the bottom is gossamer, and then the one on top, I think is a monarch, maybe. Anyways, both stamps are from Viva Las Vegas Stamps, and they've been stamped in archival ink in the black soot color on plain cardstock, and then I fussy cut them. I just definitely wasn't going to make you watch that. Then that beautiful little clay face, maybe someday I'll get around to making my own, but right now I buy them from another artist who does amazing work, and her name is Mary Vogel-Lozenek. Her link will also be in the supply list, and these faces come in such a huge variety. Some look like zombies, some are realistic, some are white and black, and I have a bunch of those, and some have colors, and they're all just so beautiful. I have a selection of them, and I only pull them out at certain times so I don't run out of them. But I urge you to pick up a couple because you will love them. Then I use my fine liner to add some handwriting to the bottom, kind of creating a bit of a horizon here, and I let that dry. Then I went back in with some Stabilo and darkened that horizon so that the bottom kind of like third, not quite third, but the bottom portion has just a little bit darker tone than the rest of the project. And that's it. I do secure the butterfly in place with a couple pieces of stacked chipboard and a thimble in the top 2 corners of the wings. So make sure things are sturdy. All right, thanks so much again for joining me. You guys, I love our mixed media moods, and I hope that you love them too. This month is a super extra treat as we have so many awesome artists joining us. Check the blog, check my description box. All the links are there. Stop by, see everybody. Subscribe to my channel, please, and thank you. And I'll see you around, guys.